I stepped off the plane holding my daughter's hand. The wind at the regional airport smelled faintly of pine and jet fuel. Maya, 5 years old in her favorite blue coat, squeezed my fingers as her feet touched the tarmac. Behind us, the private Cessna Citation hummed quietly. In front of us, a black Audi waited with the engine running. It had been 11 years since I last saw this town. 11 years since I left it with a backpack $300 and a bruise on my cheek I pretended didn't sting. 11 years since my mother, Vivian Whitmore, looked me in the eye and said, "You're no daughter of mine." She hasn't seen me since. Not after I built a company from scratch. Not when I earned my first million. Not when I gave birth to the granddaughter she doesn't know exists. I bent down to adjust Maya's scarf. She looked up at me with her father's green eyes wide with wonder. "Mommy," she whispered, "are we here?" I nodded. "We are." The last time I stood in this town, I had no place to go. Today, I had booked the suite at the nicest hotel in town, and tomorrow I would walk into the house I grew up in. I wasn't back for revenge, or closure, or forgiveness. I came back to let them see who I became without them, and to show them the child they gave up before she was ever born. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Not in square footage, it still had the 2-story white colonial facade, the bay windows trimmed in forest green, the same brass door knocker shaped like a lion's head. But time had worn down its sharpness. The once manicured lawn was patchy now. The shutters needed repainting. The flower beds my mother used to obsess over had gone to seed. Still, it stood tall, as if pretending nothing had changed. Maya pressed her face against the car window. "Is this where you grew up, Mommy?" "Yes," I said. "From the time I was born until the night I left." "It's pretty," she said, the way only a child can without knowing what lives beneath paint and siding. We sat there in silence for a few moments, the engine ticking quietly. I hadn't called ahead. I didn't want them preparing a speech or adjusting the lighting. I wanted the truth, the kind you only see when no one has time to hide it. When I finally rang the doorbell, the chime echoed inside same old Westminster melody, expensive and theatrical. My mother once told guests she had it custom installed to feel elevated. The door opened, and for a heartbeat, no one spoke. My father, Alan Whitmore, stood there older, thinner, wearing a cardigan despite the warmth. His eyes widened as he looked at me, then dropped down to Maya, who was peeking out from behind my legs. "Claire," he whispered, like saying my name might break something. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice steady. Before he could respond, I heard the familiar cadence of heels on hardwood. "Who's at the door, Alan?" Then she appeared. My mother, Vivian, still carried herself like a woman hosting a charity brunch, shoulders squared, lipstick, immaculate hair coiled into a style that hadn't changed in 20 years. For a split second, she looked exactly the same. Until she saw me. She stopped mid-step. One hand moved instinctively to her chest. Her mouth parted, but no sound came. "I thought it was time for a visit," I said. "And time you met your granddaughter." Her knees seemed to buckle slightly. Alan stepped forward, reaching to steady her out of reflex more than affection. "This is Maya," I said, gently nudging my daughter forward. "Maya, these are your grandparents. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore." Maya clutched my hand tighter, then gave them a shy little wave. Alan blinked hard, as though pulling himself into the moment. Would you like to come in?" he asked, stepping aside. The air inside the house smelled the same. Wood polish, lavender, and something older pride, maybe. The kind that stains even clean floors. It was like stepping into a photograph that hadn't been updated since the day I left. And somehow the frame still held. It began with a dress. I was 17 when my mother Vivian handed it to me, a navy blue A-line with capped sleeves and a modest neckline. "Wear this Saturday," she said, hanging it on my closet door. "We're having guests." She didn't ask if I liked it. She never did. Saturday arrived too quietly. The table gleamed under chandelier light, our best china crystal glasses, silver flatware that hadn't seen daylight in years. The air was thick with citrus cleaner and tension. My father, Alan, sat with his tie too tight, gaze fixed somewhere just above his plate. Across from me were the Duvall's family friends' recent transplants to our town, and according to my mother, very well connected. Their son Marcus was already seated when I entered, his smile as curated as the wine pairing. He was tall, conventionally handsome, his hair perfect, his shirt cuffs crisp. But his eyes were wrong, too cold, too calculating. When he leaned in to kiss my cheek, his hand lingered at the small of my back a moment too long. "You look stunning tonight," he said. It wasn't a compliment, it was a claim. Dinner unfolded slowly like a negotiation hidden behind pleasantries. My mother beamed, nodding too eagerly at everything the Duvalls said. Marcus joined conversations with smug certainty, tossing glances my way like I was already his. After dessert lemon tart with fresh cream, Mr. Duvall raised his glass and tapped it lightly. "I believe we should get to the real reason we're here." My mother straightened her posture. Marcus stood smiling in that practiced way. He stepped beside my chair. Time slowed. "Claire Whitmore," he said, producing a velvet box. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The silence that followed was surgical. My mother's hands were clasped tight, her knuckles white. Alan looked down at his plate. Marcus was still smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. I looked around the room and saw it clearly for the first time. This wasn't about love. This was about leverage, image, position. My future was being handed over like a signature on a dotted line. I need some air," I said, standing quickly. "Excuse me." Outside, the night was cooler than I expected. I stood on the back porch, hands trembling. Then the door creaked open. "Marcus." That wasn't the response I was expecting, he said, closing the door behind him. "I'm sorry. This is all very sudden." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Don't be naive, Claire. This arrangement has been in motion for months. Your mother assured us you were aligned." He stepped closer. "My father is helping yours make partner. Your mother gets her social crown. I get a beautiful young wife who knows how to host and bear children. Everybody wins." He reached for my face. I stepped back. "And what if I want something different? An education. A life I choose." Marcus's face tightened. "My wife won't need to work. A few cooking classes maybe, but otherwise your future is right here." He tapped the velvet box. "This is your future." I looked at him and saw not a husband but a cage. "No," I said the word calm and sharp. "I won't marry you." Marcus's eyes darkened. "You'll regret this." He turned and vanished inside, footsteps heavy. I stood in the quiet, and for the first time in my life, I felt something like freedom. I walked back into the dining room with my shoulders square but my heartbeat uneven. The moment I stepped in, the atmosphere had changed. The Duvalls were standing, coats already in hand. Mrs. Duvall whispered sharply into my mother's ear. Mr. Duvall threw a look at me like I was a deal gone sour. My father stood off to the side, his posture awkward, his mouth tight. When the door shut behind them, the sound landed like a gavel. Then came my mother's voice, sharp, shaking with disbelief. "What have you done?" I didn't answer right away. I could feel the weight of everything pressing against that one question, her plans, her years of control, the cracks in the version of me she'd crafted. "I've saved myself," I said finally, "from a life I never agreed to." "You ungrateful child," she spat. "Marcus Duvall is one of the most eligible bachelors in this state. He would have given you security status, everything I've prepared you for. I don't want a life that's paid for in pieces of myself." Her face turned hard. "This is about those college applications, isn't it?" she snapped. "You thought I wouldn't find them, that I wouldn't see that letter from Berkeley." My chest went still. So she knew. "I want to study business," I said. "Build something of my own." Vivian's voice dropped low. Controlled. Deadly. "You're a disgrace." And then the slap. It came without warning, her palm cutting across my cheek, the sound of it louder than the storm rising outside. My skin burned. I tasted metal. "Get out," she said, barely above a whisper. "If you're too good for the life we planned for you, then go. See how far you get on your own." Vivian. My father tried weakly. "No," she cut him off. "She's made her choice." I stood there stunned, hand to my cheek. She turned her back. "Pack your things. You're no daughter of mine." The rain didn't let up, neither did the silence in my chest. I didn't cry when I packed my backpack bare essentials. The acceptance letter from Berkeley folded like something sacred, and the $300 Dad had pressed into my hand at the door. I only cried when I realized he didn't ask me where I would go. The porch light flicked off as I walked down the driveway. A message sent. My shoes soaked through in minutes. I had no plan, no umbrella, and nowhere to sleep. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone. My mother hadn't thought to take it. One number stood out like a buoy in floodwaters. "Hi, it's Elise. I need help." It took Elise Park 20 minutes to reach me. Her old Civic coughed up steam as it rolled to the curb. She barely waited for me to open the door before pulling me into the kind of hug that holds you up when you can't stand anymore. She didn't ask for details, not at first, just drove. Her family lived 2 towns over in a cramped duplex that smelled like fried onions and dish soap. Her mother, Mrs. Park, opened the door in a housecoat and slippers. I expected suspicion. What I got was a towel and a mug of soup. That night, I slept on a couch that sagged in the middle. In the darkness, I kept touching the envelope under my pillow, not to check if it was still there, to remind myself it was real. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. I enrolled in community college using my Berkeley acceptance as proof of graduation. Berkeley itself would have to wait. There was no tuition money, only the tight braid of resolve in my chest. I worked mornings at a bakery, afternoons in class nights babysitting. I slept 4 hours a night and lived on black coffee and peanut butter sandwiches. My first apartment was a 1-room shoebox above a pawn shop. The wallpaper peeled, the radiator wheezed, and the cockroaches had names by the second week. I didn't care. It was mine. I remember the night the scholarship rejection came. A thin envelope. Standard regrets. I sat on the floor, stared at my 1 bowl and 1 spoon, and thought about calling home. The number hovered on the screen. 1 call could end this. Instead, I called Elise. "You left for a reason," she reminded me. "You're not going to trade freedom for hot water." I hung up and wrote my marketing professor at midnight asking for extra reading. The next morning, I spilled coffee on a woman's shoes. She came back the next day, and the next. Her name was Mrs. Gloria Dempsey. She ran marketing at a mid-size firm downtown. On the 3rd visit, she handed me her card. Smart, quick, polite, under pressure. Ever think about applying that somewhere besides espresso machines? I didn't know it then, but she was the first door. And unlike my mother's house, this door didn't close behind me, it opened. My first day at Dempsey & Co. was in the copy room. Not glamorous, not official. Gloria had slipped me in through a back-channel junior temp support admin overflow, which meant I sorted invoices, fetched coffee, and learned how to breathe without taking up too much space. But I watched everything. I watched how Gloria ran meetings, how she held silence like a weapon, how she asked the kind of questions that made men twice her age forget their answers. I watched how campaigns were born from scraps of paper and tension. I watched who got heard and who didn't. And when no one was looking, I learned. After 6 months, she called me into her office. "You've been writing these tagline notes on the backs of invoices," she said, holding one up. "They're good. You know that, right?" I nodded barely. She leaned forward. "Don't waste time being grateful. Use the door I opened." That year, I moved from assistant to junior creative. By 24, I was head of client strategy. By 26, I had my own LLC Whitmore Strategies. The name wasn't about pride. It was about proof that someone with nothing could build something, that my mother's name didn't have to mean silence. At 27, I met Graham Wolfe, quiet, kind, allergic to ego. We met during a sustainability campaign. He talked about soil like it was sacred and listened like time wasn't in short supply. He asked before he kissed me, and when he held me, I didn't shrink. I expanded. The night I told him I was pregnant, he said only this: "Then we build something even better." It started in the car on the way home from pre-K. Maya, 4 years old, jam-stained fingers, pink dinosaur backpack, was quiet in the back seat. Too quiet. Then, her voice soft. "Mommy, how come I don't have grandparents?" The breath caught in my throat. I kept my eyes on the road. You have Gloria, I offered, reaching for the easy answer. And Uncle Graham's parents in Oregon. She thought for a moment. But the ones from when you were little? Where are they? I couldn't say they vanished. I couldn't say I had to leave. I couldn't say they chose their image over me. So I said the smallest truth. We haven't seen each other in a very long time. Maya nodded slowly, then looked out the window again, but the question lingered like a fog. That night, after she fell asleep, clutching her stuffed frog, I sat on the porch with Graham. He didn't say anything, just passed me a cup of tea warm against my palms. I thought I made peace with it, I whispered. But now, she wants to know. Graham looked at me the way he always did, without pressure. Do you want her to know I didn't answer? Not then. But at midnight I found myself typing my mother's name into a search bar for the first time in 10 years. Her face hadn't changed. Neither had the ache. The email came 3 days later. The subject line was unassuming thought you should know. It was from my cousin Lena, the only one from my mother's side who hadn't unfollowed me after I left. Hi, Evelyn. I know this might not be welcome, but I felt you should know. Your father had emergency heart surgery last week. He's stable now, but it was serious. No pressure to respond. Just thought you'd want to know. I read it twice. 3 times. My hands were steady, but my breath was not. Graham found me standing in the hallway, still holding the phone. I showed him the screen without a word. He read, looked up, and said gently, "What are you feeling I didn't know? My father, William Monroe, was not the one who slapped me, who packed my bags, who shut the door as I stood shaking in the rain. But he had stood there, said nothing. That silence had echoed louder than anything. I spent the night half awake, staring at the ceiling, not grieving, not planning, just listening, to the hum of the house, to the memories knocking at the corners. At 5:42 a.m., I opened my laptop and pulled up the Turner & Gray accounting website. There he was, a new headshot, a little older, gray around the temples. Same half-smile he used when he didn't know what to say. And beside that, in a sidebar, something that made my chest tighten, currently on medical leave. Partner track postponed. I shut the laptop. Maybe this wasn't just about me anymore. I didn't book the flight right away. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, yellow, wide-ruled, and started making 2 lists. On the left, everything I'd built without them. On the right, everything they'd taken when they turned their backs. One list was longer, but the other weighed more. Graham poured me coffee in silence. He knew not to ask. He just sat across from me, one hand loosely wrapped around his mug, the other brushing our daughter's crayon off the table. You said once, he began, that if you ever went back, it would be on your terms. Is that still true? I looked at him. Yes, I said. But I'm not going back to explain myself. I'm going because my daughter asked why she doesn't have grandparents, and I didn't know what to tell her. That night after Ella was asleep, I drafted an email. Not to my mother, not even to my father, to Lena. Thank you for letting me know about my dad. I'm not ready for a family reunion, but I will be flying into Charleston for business next month. If you feel it would do more good than harm, you can let them know. I hit send, and just like that, I had opened a door. Not wide, but open. Still, I needed insurance. 2 days later, I called my company's COO and moved our planned regional expansion to the South Carolina coast, my hometown. The numbers had supported it for months. I had just been too stubborn to look. If I'm going to step into the past, I told Graham I want the future standing right beside me. And so it was. We booked 3 tickets, me, Graham, and Ella. But there was one condition I hadn't said out loud yet, not even to myself. I would show up, but I wouldn't knock. They would have to open the door first. The day we landed, the air felt heavier than I remembered. Not hot, just thick, like memory. Ella pressed her face to the airplane window, her breath fogging the glass. "Mommy, is that your old house?" I followed her gaze. No, but it could have been. Same white siding, same tired shutters, same yard with no laughter in it. "No, baby," I said. "That's not it. We didn't drive to their house right away. First, we went to the new office building, a brick corner unit near the water, clean, open, neutral enough to feel professional, but familiar enough to feel like a place someone like me could belong. Graham stayed behind to set up the team. And I drove. The roads hadn't changed much, but everything felt smaller, like I'd outgrown the whole town by accident. Then I saw it. The house. My childhood home. It looked the same, except older. The porch railing needed painting. The rose bushes were gone, but the curtains in the front window hadn't moved. Still cream, still stiff. I parked across the street. No one had told them I was coming. That was the point. Ella kicked her legs in her booster seat, humming quietly to herself. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. Then the front door opened. Not wide. Just enough for someone to peek through. And there she was, my mother, hair still pinned just so, lipstick a little too dark for daylight, posture like a ruler. She saw me. I saw her. Neither of us moved. Ella broke the silence. Is that her? I nodded slowly. That's your grandmother. And then something I hadn't expected. My mother stepped out. She didn't wave, didn't call out. She just started walking. Each step precise, like she was walking down an aisle, not a driveway. She stopped at the edge of the curb, folded her hands. I rolled down the window. I thought she said, voice barely audible, "You might come." My mother didn't speak right away. She stood there, hands clasped like in church eyes, locked on mine, as if afraid to blink and lose me again. I opened the car door but didn't step out. Ella leaned forward, whispering, "She looks like you, Mommy." I wasn't sure whether that was a comfort or a warning. Finally, I stood. The sidewalk between us felt longer than any hallway I'd ever walked as a child. She looked smaller now, or maybe I had simply grown into someone who no longer shrank before her. "I didn't know you'd come back," she said. I waited. That couldn't be all. After all these years, after the slap, after the silence, after the rain that soaked through my dress, the night she sent me away, surely there was more. "I heard about your company," she continued, voice stiff but quieter now. "The jet." I nodded. "We came to open a new office." Her eyes flicked to the car. "And she's yours?" I didn't answer. Instead, I crouched and unbuckled Ella. "This is Ella," I said, lifting her out. "She's 5, and she's curious." Ella offered a small wave. My mother didn't wave back, just stared, hands still clenched. I kept your room the same," she said suddenly. I thought maybe one day the words caught. Not out of emotion, but out of fear. Of saying too much. Or the wrong thing. There are 2 kinds of silence. One that punishes, and one that pleads. I had known her punishing silence all my life. This was something else. Something raw. Ella broke the moment. "Do you have cookies?" It was the kind of question only a child could ask to break open grief with something so sweet and ordinary. My mother hesitated, then opened the door wider. "No," she said, "but we can make some. If your mom says it's okay."